Hey, how's it going, everyone? Freddie again. We're in the studio this time. Before we begin with the beats, I just wanted to quickly talk about basically how I save all my stuff. Just basically file management. For a long time, I was just working on off my computer, basically like my laptop or something like that, and I was just saving everything to my laptop and maybe like backing it up on an external hard drive that was kind of shitty at the time. But since then, through some heartaches, meaning like I've accidentally deleted files and I've accidentally deleted like partitions off hard drives. I've kind of learned from my mistakes and I kind of back up my stuff and I make backups of backups now. But for the most part, I keep everything on the stuff that I'm currently working on. I keep on just basically a portable hard drive. This is just a Samsung SSD hard drive here. It's a 1 terabyte one. But this is where I keep all my like sequences, Ableton sessions, all my sample library, all like old master sequences, everything that I kind of just need at a moment's notice that I kind of carry with me. But I also pretty much back up everything. I make a backup of this on these drives here. I don't know if you can see them. So I have a couple of network drives here. I have a couple of WD MyClouds that I use for archiving, as well as another NAS that has two SSDs in a RAID configuration that I basically use for archiving. And I have some other older, not completely super old, but some previous SSD external enclosures that I have connected via USB to these NASs as well. Firstly, I was using the WD MyClouds. Basically it all started from me wanting to build my own server, and in the long run, I was just like, okay, this is just kind of like more of a headache for me personally. I mean, I would eventually like to build a server, but you know how loud servers are, and you kind of have to have a dedicated space for them because they're running constantly. And I just didn't have the time or the energy to put into it. But I did a lot of research into building a server and kind of running. I was even thinking about using an old computer as like a server and running free NAS on it and everything. But I just decided not to. And I kind of invested in a couple of the WD MyCloud units. They work really well for my purposes. I mainly use it to back up a lot of files. And with the MyCloud units, I'm able to access these files when I'm away from the studio. So these are basically network drives, and they connect to my home network, meaning my router, and like a switch or a gigabit internet switch. And they connect to my internet as well. So I'm able to access all these files when I'm away from home, basically, or when I'm away from the studio. So there's been times where, like I open up an Ableton session in some other place and I'm missing like a couple files that I don't have on me. So I know I have these files here, and if I have access to like an internet service or internet source, I can just log on to these network drives and just download the files that I need. Same with this one. This has a couple of SSDs in here, a couple of terabyte SSDs in a RAID configuration, so I can kind of make backups of backups pretty much. But yeah, that's just kind of like how I manage all my files. Other than that, I use Google Drive for just kind of like file sharing, especially with other artists and stuff, and friends and stuff like that, DJs. I use Google Drive over like Dropbox because I just been using Google for a long time. I think it's just more, the pricing is better because I subscribe to a higher tier, and they don't have any bandwidth caps on their service, so it just helps me out a little bit. I did use Dropbox before Google Drive came out, and I think Dropbox has bandwidth caps, but Google Drive doesn't. And, it's Google, so it's like faster, and I think it's more dependable. But yeah, let's just get into it. We're in the studio here. We're not going to use any of this stuff. Whoops. We're not going to use any of the stuff pictured here. In fact, we're just going to turn everything off here. And the only thing that we're actually going to use for hardware is this thing. And it's an Alesis Q25. It's just like a simple MIDI keyboard. They're fairly cheap. I think you can find these used for about like $20 to $40. Or you can find something comparable to it. But we're just going to go ahead and just use this. And just plug it in here. This is all we're going to use. But we're also going to use Ableton. I kind of wanted to use, let me just shrink the thing here. I kind of wanted to use just Ableton by itself and just using a really simple MIDI controller. So I have a sample loaded already on here. I kind of don't want to play out the sample, but I'll play out the chops. So those are basically the chops. The way I chopped it is I just basically imported the file into Ableton. And if you right click here, you can slice to a new MIDI track. It's one of the options down here. And there's a few options you can do. You can create your own warp markers. So if I, let me just close this out. If I come down here and I actually create warp points like this, then you can slice, you know, just make your own designated areas to chop. You can also chop by transient, so where there's peaks basically in the waveform, you can chop there. And you can also chop via like bars or like eighth notes, half notes. And then when you're ready, you can select the slicing preset. The built-in is kind of like a drum rack. Then they have sampler, which is more of, I don't even know how to explain it, just a different type of, it's not the drum rack, it's like a sampler. And then it just created chops for you. The only reason the only thing about Ableton is they don't have just like a plain sampler as a default, if you can see here. So you have to kind of create your own. So what I do basically here, if I can just show you real quick, is you can go to instruments and just load a new sampler in. So here's like a new sampler, it's blank, there's no sample in it. You can also drag your sample in here, but it doesn't really create chops for you like automatically. It's just kind of like a one shot. So I don't do that. But just taking a blank sampler, you can actually save it. If you go here, and it'll save under, I guess, your user library sampler right here on the left side. And then what you can do is if you go to your, this is within Mac anyway. I have Ableton 10. If you right click either Ableton 10 or 9 or whatever you're using, show package contents, just go into contents, app resources, core library, and let's see, I think it's defaults, and then slicing. You can drag what you just saved into this folder, and then it's basically like a blank sampler. Because if I go to slice to new MIDI here, the default ones of the sampler are these ones except for the last one. This is the one I created. It's all these, but they have all these parameters that are kind of adjusted where it's just like stupid. I don't ever use it like that. So just having like a default one with nothing adjusted on it is just better. So this is what I did. I just put the sampler, the one I created, and actually kind of did an auto slice in a way. So I selected half note here, and then it created chops in half notes here, or the MIDI notes. But it's basically those chops. So let's go ahead and just play with it. Let me just mute that one. So this is kind of what I came up with initially. So let's go ahead and record that. So we'll go here. Let me just have this bigger. Let's. So here are all the notes that we just played on the bottom. I'm just going to kind of clean it up a little bit, just kind of quantize it and just see how it sounds. That's decent. Then we're gonna go look for a drum break. So this is basically, you can kind of create your own files here on the left, or file locations, and this is just going to one of my hard drives. So let's just kind of slice up a drum break. Okay, we'll take this one. I like to have a few choices here. We'll just take these two. So we'll do the same thing here, where we can kind of slice to new MIDI. And for this one, I'm going to actually use the built-in, because it basically puts it in a drum rack. And I'm going to use transients for this one. It's going to create 25 slices. So let's see what it came up with. Oops. Let's see. It is this one. And let's just take the volume down on the sample a little bit. Oops. Let's mute those real quick and just delete this. Turn this up. I kind of don't like those drums. They're okay, but let's try this one, and let's see if we can make something else out of this one. So let's try this. So the reason why I like to use, when I slice to new MIDI for drums, is because I like to add effects on each like little section of the drums. Meaning, like, I like to add my own kind of effects to the kick, my own little effects to the snare and the hi-hats. They all have like individual kind of like effects or parameters, as opposed to the sample, where the sample is on sampler. With this, I like to add effects to overall to all the chops. Like the same effects would be applied to all the chops rather than just one effect at a time. And then with this one, you can also adjust like the transposing, or like the detuning of the sample, and it'll affect all the chops, not just one of the chops. See? Let's go ahead and just maybe place some drums on this. So the way I like to do this is, I do it differently, but for this, I'm just going to go ahead and record the snare and then just add everything else on top of it in a little bit. the snare. Okay, we'll just add on to that. Sometimes I like to just duplicate the drum track and then just do the kick, or like keep everything separate. So I'll do the kick on a separate track. Okay, and we'll duplicate it again. Just erase that, and then see what else we have on here. Here's the hi-hat. I'm not going to actually record this yet. Okay, let's record. So that's our drums. Let's just solo the drums so you can kind of hear what's going on here. So with the snare, if we go here, if you can hear the very tail end of that, it kind of has like a little bit of the beginning of the next sample. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of that. See, same with the kick. See if you hear the very end of it, you can hear the beginning of the next like sample. Okay, we should be good with that. So I'm just going to add a little bit of effects to this. We're just going to use the stock Ableton effects. I'm just going to add a little bit of reverb to the snare. And I'm going to copy this over to the hi-hat as well. And just a little bit more on the hi-hats. And I'm going to add a EQ onto the hi-hats as well. And this is the way I usually chain it as well. I usually have the reverb at the end of the chain and maybe the EQ at the beginning of the chain. So we're just going to take some of that low end off of the hi-hats. So if I just solo just the hi-hats, see, this is it without the EQ and even without the reverb. So we just take that low end off. See how this sounds. See, we still have some of that ending stuff. There. Okay, so let's mess with the sample here. We'll add a little EQ and a little reverb to this as well. Okay, let me just hear this real quick, because there might be some percussion kind of, or hi-hat stuff on here that I want to use, or maybe even stacked snares. Yeah, let's stack those snares. So let's record this. Whoops. Okay, so these are the snares that we just recorded from a different drum rack. And we're gonna add, let me just duplicate this real quick. We'll just add some reverb because it's basically on the second hits. Whoops. Just bring it down a little bit. Okay. Maybe I can use this. Okay, let's record that. So those are some new hi-hats that we just recorded. We'll add a little bit of reverb to this as well. And I kind of want to bring in, or take off the, slow the attack on it. So it's like that. Bring down the volume a little bit. Okay. It's kind of weird because the sample has that like triangle hit in it. I mean, we could shift over the sample a little bit so it hits on the triangle, but I kind of like it a little sloppy. But let's see if we can, I mean, we can kind of roll off some of the high end if we wanted to. So it's like this. Okay, and let's kind of complete the drums a little bit. So let's look for some just like percussion loops. And we'll just play the drums real quick. Yeah. Kind of cool, I guess. See how that sounds. We can also transpose the pitch on it as well. Okay, let's just put a pin on that one. See how this sounds. Kind of bring the volume down on these. Pretty cool. let's just move this sample over, and I'm gonna play maybe some variation to this, because sometimes like I'll get the drums going and I'll be like, you know, like maybe I can just kind of flip the sample a little bit differently than originally. And I'll find like different chops that I want to play, so I'll just kind of just wing it. That's okay. Let's see what else we have here. Those are the original samples that we used. Let's actually go here. See what else we have here. Yeah, it's whatever's, but let's just record it. Oh, wrong one. Let's just take that part. Bring it back up. Okay, let's just compare that with the original sample. Okay, I kind of like the original sample, but we'll play it a little bit differently. It's just like too wild, I think. to redo that. Okay, let's maybe pick a bass line here. Let's use operator for this. I don't usually use operator, but it's that subby kind of bass. I think it's a little too subby sometimes, so we can kind of like just mess with the frequencies here. Let me just adjust the attack on this. Just transpose it real quick. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate all of this stuff over just so we have a little bit more room to work with as far as bass line goes. And then we'll see what's what. Let's try it. Let's redo that. I'm not happy with it. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's only like 3 or 4 notes. Hold on. Let's redo it one more time. I always do this. Always have to redo it. Let's add an auto filter to this sample as well, and we can kind of do like a sweep. All right, let's see if we can kind of add stuff onto this. I don't really use any. Honestly, I don't really use any of these instruments within Ableton, but we're going to see what we can come up with. Let's EQ this as well, because I kind of don't like that low end of it. Let's pick a different instrument. Something like this, maybe. Or not. Let's try this one. And let's duplicate this stuff over to the let's add a few more effects to this. Like a little delay. Yeah, whatever. And just for, oh, actually, I don't want to add that. I was going to add some, like, usually I add RC20 or something to that, but since we're just using the stock Ableton stuff, I mean, we can add, like, compressors to this master bus or whatever. Maybe this glue compressor. I'm using Ableton 10 Suite, so hopefully you guys have some of this stuff. 2:1 ratio. And what I like to do is add this audio, this audio effect rack, and then just put all your plugins into this. That way you can kind of just turn on everything, on and off everything all at once. And say that if your drums aren't hitting as hard as you want to, you can actually, I like to group all this stuff. So these are all the drums, so let's group this. And then say we use this drum bus on the group. It's a lot harder. And then just pretty much it though. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to make this video longer than it already is. So that's basically just kind of like something kind of started from scratch. I mean, I did kind of just preview the sample just so we wouldn't waste so much time trying to find something, but the drums are kind of just made from scratch, and the sample chops. That's usually how I kind of work in Ableton. This isn't like the best beat, honestly. It's kind of an okay kind of beat. I do like the drums. I'm just not too excited about the sample. I might just keep these drums and then just go find something else to work with as far as sampling goes. But that's pretty much how I use Ableton. I kind of want to just show you that you don't need like all this other stuff over here. I know I have like a push as well as the MPCs and all this other stuff, but you don't need all that stuff, especially when working with software. You just use a simple MIDI controller, as well as, you know, kind of like this. Basically, the only things I really had to invest in was this MIDI controller and then the sounds that I was using, basically, like the drums. I purchased sample packs, and then, you know, I just kind of dig for samples as well, as far as the sample chops go. But, you know, the drums stuff, I just purchased sample packs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll try to come up with something a little bit better. I know this beat is kind of okay as far as compared to my other stuff, but that's kind of how I usually work in Ableton, just starting something from scratch. And I kind of wanted just to use the stock Ableton like plugins and sounds and stuff, because if you're already on Ableton Suite, then this is stuff you can already work with. It, you know, the effects, like these synths with operator and whatnot. Just, yeah, these come with Ableton. So yeah, you don't need a whole bunch. You just kind of like know-how and a little bit of some samples, you know, you do need, like as far as drums and stuff like that. But yeah. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Next video, hopefully sometime later on this week, or I don't know.